Dozens of countries,
Brother Warren.
hundreds of cities,
The
millions of
war is
people.
still private.
One man, now in the palm of your hand, on any device. For over 60 years, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has dedicated his life to spreading the message of freedom, justice, and equality to people all over the world. Log in to NFA Studios and get unlimited access to a vast library of his life's work, plus never released lectures, interviews, and exclusive content. With new releases every week, NFA Studios is your one-stop destination for spiritual and mental upliftment. And now, introducing NFA Original Content, featuring shows such as Dinner with the Minister, How to Eat to Live Cooking Show, 40 Miles the Series.
In this series, we're going to look at the history of the Nation of Islam,
Food Nation, and much more. The wait is over. Welcome to the evolution. Welcome to NFA Studio.
The messenger of the Lord of the world, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, as I greet you.
He departed in 1975. His son assumed power, and within a few years, the nation as we once knew it was completely gone.
I watched it step by step, how Allah allowed things to unfold.
This episode, we're going to take a look at what it took for the minister to rebuild the nation.
When I left Mecca and decided to rebuild the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, then all of the forces that would come against me did.
We had great opposition, and the climate was so hateful.
Christian and Muslim and Jew, believer and non-believer, stay away from Madison Square Garden.
The people literally tore the doors off of Madison Square Gardens.
So now the nation is thriving, we're moving forward.
And follow his king right up to walk with me.
They knew we were ready now, but Minister told us never be aggressive.
They were like angels that Allah put around them.
I remember it just being a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun.
It was off the chain.
And I look back at her, how did we do it?
He said, you see, Aziz, the only thing that works is the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Welcome to 40 Miles.
Welcome to Food Nation. We're going to be traveling cities across the country, tasting the best of foods nationwide. The food is here! She put flowers in the chicken, son.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get out of here, man.
Greetings, I'm Sister Hania, and this is How to Eat to Live. Our believe is done.
Our whipped, mashed cauliflower. I'm telling you, this eggplant right here is a winner.
Eggs are what helps the breadcrumbs stick to the eggplant. We don't want to use aluminum. You can use cast iron or stainless steel, but never aluminum. Aluminum is a reactive metal. When you scratch the bottom of the pan, then that aluminum comes up and gets in your food. and that's poison. An eggplant, like I said, it's very high in fiber. It has magnesium, niacin. It was one of the good vegetables for us to eat.
What is marriage? When we think of marriage, everyone has their own idea of what the ideal marriage looks like. A man and a woman and their children. You see the woman and she's so in love, and the man can't take his eyes off of her. So we know what it's supposed to look like on the outside, but there's a lot that goes into having the ideal relationship. Are we strong enough to go through the struggles to find love on the other side? Why even go into something knowing that you'll face difficulties? Since the beginning, there's always been a man and a woman. So I guess you can say that since it's always been here, that love is as natural as breathing. So it's a struggle, but it's an uphill struggle. The ability to love through the darkness, love in black.
Getting married, according to what we have learned from the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as well as the scriptures of Bible and Holy Quran, marriage, Prophet Muhammad said, is one half of faith. So if faith is the spiritual journey that one goes from being what is called worthless water or sperm into a process of evolving to becoming a reflection of God. If marriage is half of faith, then marriage is half of that journey to become one with God, bearing witness to the Bible and that statement of Prophet Muhammad. The male and the female were created two twin halves of a single essence. Well, if man and woman was created in pairs, what would you call a person that only had one eye or one leg? They are called handicapped. So when a man is without a woman, he's handicapped. And when a woman is without a good man, she's handicapped. So getting married makes you a complete you.
Okay, so where we were?
How we met?
We met in middle school.
First time that I seen Aisha was at Savior's Day.
We met at the gym.
We first met when I was 15 years old and she was 13 years old.
Do you want to tell the how we met story? Because we both tell it differently.
I'll start.
Through NFA, our own platform, the people will be able to meet the minister, see the minister, experience the minister. The teaching is there and it will resist now because it's the truth. It can't be bent. This is the platform. So may Allah bless NFA. May Allah bless all those who would work on behalf of the vision and let the vision continue to expand.
Never fall again. Never fall again.
America was not built on a firm foundation. The nation called America was doomed from its inception. How do you build a nation? Killing the native people. How do you build a nation? Bringing a whole people out of Africa to America to be made slaves. This is your foundation.
The world is looking at a country going to hell. You are opting to be a part of that is unraveling right in front of your eyes. You see the country cascading downward. This is America. Why do you want to get into something that is coming to an end? So we are living in the time of the unraveling of this great nation.
Welcome to the Foodie Spot. My name is Sister Carmela Muhammad, and we are a proud sponsor of Doing the Math with Dr. Wesley. I come to you in preparation for possible hard times. We've been told to store food in our home by the Honorable Mrs. Farrakhan, so you can also come to the Foodie Spot and get your navy bean soup, vegetable medley soup, and lentil bean soup, pressure cooked canned. In addition to that, I have dried navy beans. We also have frozen dinners prepared that you can actually store it in your freezer for those times. Pull them out, warm them up, cook them. We also have our natural antibiotic, which consists of fresh ginger root, turmeric root, garlic, and horse relish. We are also shipping our natural antibiotics in addition to our navy beans, red lentil, vegetable medley, and bean pies. For shipping, call 773-420-3948. Again, for shipping, call 773-420-3948. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Good afternoon, powerful creators, and welcome back to this week's episode of Doing the Math with Dr. Wesley Muhammad. I'm your host, Janita Harris, and if you remember, we are currently doing a 3-series special on the Vindication of Michael Jackson. So yesterday we did series 1 of it, so I know many of you tuned in, lots of people actually tuned in, and today we are going to do part 2, and the plot thickens. I know some of you were like, it's super short, but this is why it's a 3-day special. And Dr. Wesley has just joined us. Hey, Dr. Wesley, how are you?
I'm well. How about yourself, Sister Janita?
I am good. I'm good.
Where's my beautiful niece at?
Oh, so they went home. She was so excited. She was so excited to say hi to everybody, and she was telling her mom, "I got to say hi to Aunt Titi Gina's friends."
We gotta bring her back.
So I appreciate you as well as the audience for embracing my niece. And man, I better watch out for her. She's trying to take my job. I'm gonna be unemployed soon.
Yeah.
All right. So yesterday we left off at a cliffhanger. So what do you want to say about that?
I'm excited to get over the cliff.
Yeah.
Dive head first over the cliff and see part 2. Now, this is we touch on some pretty touchy matters in episode 2. It gets deep. Some may have thought part 1 yesterday was deep, but that was really just the opening.
Oh yeah.
We go considerably deeper, touch on some very difficult subjects. Nothing about our brother Michael Jackson's demise, if you will. Nothing about it is easy. There's so many lessons in his life and in his death and in his legacy. And the darkness of it, we're getting right to the meat of it in this episode 2. But we engage it not because we are dark people who just revel in darkness, but because Michael Jackson, as I said, Michael Jackson's life, his death, and his legacy is instructive for each and one of us.
Yeah, this next section will get a little probably uncomfortable for a lot of people as we delve deeper into some of the accusations against Michael Jackson. And so viewer discretion is advised with that being said. However, I do think that you did a really good job at documenting it.
To give ear to today.
Yeah.
This one ain't PG like yesterday.
Yeah, no, today's not PG, today's rated R. So keep that in mind. But Dr. Wesley is gonna give us a lot of information and research, and we're gonna unpack it all together. And then, Brother Warren and Rochester are so amazing because those edits that they put in when they're zooming in onto your research, I'm excited to see what else is gonna look like.
Shout out to Brother Warren and Brother Rochester. We got a fire team at Do the Math.
Yep. So, all right, everyone. Also, remember that you will be able to ask questions at the end. There is going to be a course of talkback. You can ask Dr. Wesley directly. And if you are a Patreon, one of our amazing Patreons who we're so grateful for, you have the opportunity to come on to the show and join us and ask your question. So hopefully, y'all aren't camera shy and you join us today, because that would be awesome. But if not, I'm more than willing to take your questions like we did yesterday. So with that being said, let's
trying to brush your teeth, comb your hair, and come on the show.
Yeah, come on the show.
Comb your hair and come on the show after.
Yeah. All right. With that being said, let's jump into part 2. Many people have denied the existence of this so-called gay mafia, yet in your research you've really compiled the evidence suggesting that people are very aware of the gay mafia, dating back from court documents that you've provided, as well as Mark Ebner, and published in the Spy magazine in publication of 1995, also talks about that the gay mafia is real. And it seems to be that at the top of the gay mafia is going to be billionaire David Geffen, who is also Jewish. What's interesting is you talk about that at one point, Michael Jackson says that his best friends were Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, both who are Jewish. And what's interesting is not too long ago, Steven Spielberg's adoptive daughter, Michaela, who's 24 years old, has recently gone into the adult film industry. As going into the adult film industry, she shared that she had been molested. What was interesting about her sharing that she had been molested is she also said that it had nothing to do with her famous father's circle, which, that is a very important statement to make in terms of saying I was molested, but it has nothing to do with that. Why I think that's interesting is because in your report, you also talk about that David Geffen, as well as Steven Spielberg and another person, I forgot their name.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Yes, Jeffrey Katzenberg were known for these underage parties in which men, and it was boys only, would have sex with underage boys. And so for me, I think it's really relevant to bring up the fact that Steven
that's
Spielberg's
Bryan
daughter.
Singer.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's Bryan Singer. Yeah.
So this is very important.
Mm-hmm.
What I said was Michael Jackson was neither gay nor a child molester, but he was targeted by a circle of gay child molesters. So let's back up.
Mhm.
You know, Michael's all of Michael's woes, I think, can go back to two unfortunate events, one in 1986 and one in 1990.
Mhm.
No, Pepsi commercial was 1984. Now that was unfortunate, but he could have recovered from the burning of his scalp. The Pepsi commercial. He could not recover from what happened in 1986 and then in 1984. In 1986, a conference took place in Los Angeles. North American Man-Boy Love Association. It's a pedophile group
That's crazy.
inspired by the pedophilia of ancient Greece. NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association, they met in LA in November 1986. They, according to Victor Gutierrez, who, if there's one person that we can hang the false narrative of Michael Jackson as pedophile, there's one person we can hang that false narrative on, it's Victor Gutierrez, a Chilean freelance journalist, but who was tapped by NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association, but also tapped by LAPD and the FBI. All three of these organizations tapped Victor Gutierrez in 1986 to do what he did. And what did he do? Well, he was at that NAMBLA conference with these pedophiles who discussed Michael Jackson. And they saw Michael Jackson as a means to normalize their cause. They saw Michael Jackson and his relationship to all of these children, which was all innocent. But at that NAMBLA conference in November 1986, these pedophiles said they can use Michael, convert him, because they drew a distinction between pedophile and child molester. They presented pedophilia as love between a grown man and an underage boy. So at that conference, they discussed Michael Jackson and his relationship to children, making him the poster boy for their cause to normalize pedophilia in America. Victor Gutierrez left that conference with LAPD credentials, with FBI credentials. He left that conference with his mission to out Michael Jackson as a pedophile. And on that day, he began fabricating. He's Chilean, he's South American. Michael Jackson had all of these South American, Spanish-speaking maids and workers. He ingratiated himself, Victor Gutierrez, with NAMBLA, LAPD, and FBI credentials. All of those three institutions targeted Michael, and they used Victor Gutierrez. He constructed, on behalf of those three, the Michael Jackson is a pedophile narrative. That's 1986. Then in 1990, Michael Jackson's, his three friends, my best friends are Jewish. He said in 1995. But by that time, those three best friends that he quoted had already become his toxic frenemies, but he didn't know it yet. Those three friends, David Geffen, Steven Spielberg, and Jeffrey Katzenberg. Michael didn't know that his best friend, David Geffen, by that time, had become his enemy because of something that happened in 1990. What happened in 1990? Well, Michael Jackson was at a party that the gay mafia likes to throw. In particular, Sandy Galen, a gay Jew, who was Michael Jackson's manager, but he was David Geffen's best friend, gay mafia folk. Sandy Galen, at his management company was the receptionist was Shanna Mangenthal, a sister. And she reports in her book, she asks Michael, what happened with you and David Geffen? And this is what she says Michael told her, that at this party in 1990, Sandy Galen's party, Madonna was there and all the Hollywood big shots was there and Michael was there. And Madonna made a pass at Michael. Madonna, according to Shanna's account, Madonna wanted to sleep with Michael. And he considered it. He asked. So, okay, because Michael wasn't gay. But unfortunately, that wasn't the only one who made a pass at Michael. According to what Shanna Mangenthal says Michael told her on that night, David Geffen, the Jewish homosexual, made a physical pass at Michael. He tried to seduce Michael, kiss Michael, and Michael rebuffed him because he's not gay. And according to Michael, from that point on, their relationship split. But Michael, until it was too late, didn't realize exactly how deep the split was. David Geffen is one who, you ever insult him, he brings hellfire on your head. So many of Michael's problems in life and in death is the result of that insult that David Geffen suffered when he tried to sexually advance on Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson rebuffed him. And so, if you doubt it, just note that Leaving Neverland, that horrible documentary, why did Oprah do what she did? Well, because Oprah is David Geffen's best buddy. And when Leaving Neverland premiered, Oprah and Gayle King were on David Geffen's boat watching the premiere, because David Geffen is, and all of those, John Bronco, the Michael Jackson estate is in the hands of Michael Jackson's enemies. So even because Michael was a god in life and in death, so they weren't finished with him by taking his physical life. David Geffen, the gay mafia, the Jewish mafia, the Italian mafia, they all still are conspiring to murder his legacy because their hate, and these are the most powerful of white people, but the reason their hatred for him was so strong was because Michael Jackson wasn't the king of pop. That's so cheap. Michael Jackson was a god. And so my title, How to Kill a God, it may sound offensive or blasphemous to unlearned ears, but it's accurate. for witnessing the murder of a God, and the how to. It's important because it's instructive for us guys in this room.
So walk us through how Evan Chandler, which is Jordan Chandler's father, one of the child accusers at the time,
The first child
accuser, gets involved with Victor as well as David Geffen.
So again, this show should be titled The Vindication of Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was never a child molester. Michael Jackson's, if I would say, Michael Jackson's chief character flaw was he was a horrible character judge. He was a horrible character judge. He was so humane, and you read those who were instrumental in his demise, when you read them say things like, he was the nicest human being I ever met. And for a predator, one with a predatory nature, the nicest human being looks like to them raw meat.
Yeah.
That's not a compliment when they say that Michael's humanity fed their lust. So Michael, all of what happened to Michael ultimately is traced subsequently. The pivot in Michael's life was 1993, but what happened in 1993 was fed by 1986 and 1990. That's why. So those two events of 1986, that NAMBLA conference and their determination that Michael would be the poster boy for their cause to normalize pedophilia in America. And then with Victor Gutierrez, with the backing of NAMBLA, LAPD, and FBI. And then in 1990, his insult to David Geffen and the gay mafia. These two forces converged to produce 1993. And Michael Jackson never recovered from the fallout of that horrendously criminal conspiracy in 1993 that brought the malicious child molestation charges, and everything in his career after that goes back to that, to the reason he had to do. Michael never wanted, Michael didn't like touring. So when AEG first approached Michael Jackson for the This Is It tour, twice he rebuffed them. He didn't want to go on tour. He didn't like tour. He wanted to make movies. The reason he had to sign on to AEG was because he was cash broke, and all of his woes go back to 1993 and these malicious false charges. Evan Chandler, whose real name was Evan Hamitz, a Jew whose name was too Jewish sounding, so he anglicized it to Chandler. Evan Chandler, a Jewish dentist who hated being a dentist. He wanted to be a Hollywood script writer. He was not in his son Jordan's like Jordan Chandler. And so false accuser of Michael Jackson, but it wasn't him because he always denied that his friend Michael Jackson ever touched him until his father, Evan, drugged his son Jordan with a hypnotic and suggestibility drug, amatyl sodium, which the father used to drug the son to pull a false confession out of him. But what was this about? Michael made a mistake. It appears Michael was smitten by Jordan's mother, June. June and Evan were divorced, and they were involved in a bitter custody battle. At the time, Evan owed June $75,000 in child support. But June had remarried David Schwartz. But at this time, even June and David were estranged. It was in the midst of that Michael met June and Jordan, the 13-year-old boy. And Michael was a little smitten by June. So he would take June and Jordan to these big events, award shows, and the media humiliated David, the estranged husband. They presented June and Jordan and David and June's daughter as Michael's secret family, and the tabloids were all over it, and that angered David, who previously had no problem with Michael and Jordan's relationship. He was a fan until he was humiliated by the tabloids. And when Michael, June, and Jordan appeared in May 1993 on the cover of the National Enquirer, that's when Victor Gutierrez got his idea. Victor Gutierrez, the agent of NAMBLA and the FBI and LAPD. That's when he decided little Jordan would be his target. Victor Gutierrez. So there's a confluence of most unfortunate factors, and Michael was totally oblivious to it, but it's so insidious, so devilish what they did to him. Victor Gutierrez. So June and Jordan had a relationship with Michael Jackson. Evan did not. Evan was a wannabe Hollywood scriptwriter. Evan approached Michael Jackson and said, you want to be friends with my son, Evan? Well, I need you to finance my script writing career. Specifically, Sony had given Michael Jackson $40 million for a film production company, Lost Boys Production. That was Michael's company's. Sony invested $40 million. Evan Chandler, who did not know Michael, when he first met Michael, he said, I want 20 million of that 40 million. You finance.
That's crazy.
Yeah. The entitlement of these people. Yes. He hit Michael and he don't know you.
Oh, honey.
But he had the audacity to hit Michael with finance 4 films 4 of my films at $5 million a film over 4 years, or else. And we got Evan and David Schwartz, 3 taped phone calls where the plot is laid out. So this ain't speculation.
Yeah, you transcribed it. I was
Yeah.
surprised where Evan's like, I'm going to ruin
Well,
I'm gonna ruin Michael. And I told June she's gonna lose
never
Jordy.
see Jordan
Yeah.
again. And David asked, well, what would I do to Jordan? I said, it's irrelevant to me,
Yeah.
the effect that will have on my sons. Victor, but Evan admits he knows, because in June said there was nothing inappropriate in Michael Jackson and Jordan Chandler's relationship. Evan says he had to be convinced that there was a problem in that relationship. And who convinced Evan Chandler? Evan was greedy. There was no pedophile or child molestation. He wanted money. Like, you going around the country with my ex-wife that I still have possession of, and you buddies with my son, all right, it's going to cost you, and this is what it will cost you. $20 million, $5 million a piece for 4 film productions. That was his angle. But when Victor Gutierrez approached Evan and convinced Evan to make this a child pedophilia case, and Evan went to Michael and his lawyer, Burt Fields, and said, give me that deal, or I'm going to go public with these allegations. Now, Jordan always said he never touched me. He asked, have you ever seen Michael naked? Said, no, only one time he pulled up his shirt and I saw the splotches because he had vitiligo. I saw the splotches on his chest. That's all Jordan ever saw of Michael's body. It's important because in the case as it would develop, this talk of his penis and his buttocks. Well, we trace the origin of that fabrication. So that's how the conspiracy came about. Evan's greed and attempted opportunism to get a $20 million deal out of his son's friend. And then into that, Victor Gutierrez and the pedophile agenda steps in.
Right.
And conscripts Evan into the pedophile agenda. This is how you get the false charges of child molestation. And the boy always repeatedly said, Michael never touched me. The only confession was when his father drugged him with a hypnotic drug. And then, and this is to be known, when Michael Jackson was backdoored by his lawyers with that settlement, Michael never wanted to settle that case. He wanted to go to court because he would have beat that, like he beat the case in 2005. He was exonerated. There need be no discussion of 2005 charges. He was exonerated. He would have been exonerated in 1993 had it went to court. There was nothing. The Santa Barbara Police Department, the Los Angeles Police Department, they were pulling their hair out because they were able to produce no corroborating evidence. And all of the evidence Michael's attorneys had proven extortion was the case, but Michael's lawyers, who were friends with Evan Chandler's lawyers, Evan Chandler's lawyer, Larry Feldman. Michael's lawyer, Burt Fields, backed out and replaced himself with another Jew, Howard Weitzman. He came in and decided with Johnny Cochran to settle the case. Michael never wanted to settle it, but by settling that case, that damaged Michael Jackson forever, because they always refer to his settlement, his hush money. So it's taken as guilt, and it damaged his credibility. But I'm going to say this. Jordan Chandler, he confessed later that it was all a fabrication. At 14 years old, he was 13 at the time, his parents fabricated, really Evan fabricated that narrative. After the settlement was paid at 14 years old, he filed to be legally free from his lying parents, and the court granted him legal emancipation from his parents. He never spoke to his parents since then, and he went off to college, and all of his friends, many of whom were going to testify in the 2005 trial, were going to testify that Jordan Chandler told them that Michael never did that, and his parents forced him to say that, and that's why he sought emancipation from his parents. So that's the story of the 1993 fabrication, but how it had ramifications on everything that happened in his life.
Mm-hmm.
He had to cancel his Dangerous tour because of the charges. By canceling his Dangerous tour, not only did he take a financial loss, but it set him in debt because now he's sued. Michael had to, because it all goes back to the calendar, and Sony, Tommy Mottola, his Italian convert Jewish mafia enemy of Michael. He was there behind the scenes. Sony seized that opportunity because Michael is cash broke.
Mm.
He's suffering from all these lawsuits now. He needs money. He don't have money to live. He had to sell half of his catalog to Sony, to Tommy Mottola, in order to get cash to live. Sony always coveted owning the full catalog. So from that point to his death, Sony and everybody else did everything they can to take Sony. Tommy Mottola wanted, they owned 50% of the catalog. They wanted the other 50%.
Mm.
So this is why they sunk when Tommy Mottola and Michael Jackson had that 2002 rift, that beef. Michael is in New York protesting. He's with Al Sharpton. Michael called Tommy Mottola a devil twice.
The record companies really, really do conspire against their artists. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the black artists. Sony, Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish. And Tommy Mottola is a devil.
Because he charged and he was right. Sony deliberately sank Michael's Invincible album. Well, you would say, why would Sony, what would be their interest in sabotaging the success of the album of their biggest star? Because the money that a successful Invincible album was going to bring to Sony paled in comparison to the money the full ownership of the catalog was going to bring to Sony. So they calculated on ruining Michael's career, and Tommy Mottola said to Michael on conference calls with other people that Fox News reported on, Tommy Mottola told Michael, I'm going to ruin your career.
Now, Tommy Mottola was also married to Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey also said that he was crazy and controlling. Wasn't there a Dave Chappelle special, or someone was reported one time that she had security in the house that was just watching her all the time during her marriage to him? It made me think of that. But the Chandlers, from how you've laid them out in your research, they're very bizarre.
Yeah, they're very dysfunctional human situation Michael stepped into.
Right, because when you think about a father trying to normalize a consensual relationship with his son and Michael Jackson and the way he was probing, that's abnormal. And then it makes me think, well, yeah, that's nice and all that Jordan later told the truth, but then Jordan later on does Leaving Neverland. And that's
what
really,
Jordan didn't do Leaving Neverland.
What was the
those were the
that wasn't June wasn't in that one? It was the other boy's mom?
Well, was June Chandler in that? I don't know. Jordan disappeared. Jordan didn't do any press. So if June was in
one
there,
of the boys' moms were on there, and she was talking about how each year
I think that was Gavin's.
It was Gavin's.
Mom.
Well, each year her room was getting further and further, and her son's was getting closer to Michael's, and it was really interesting to hear.
That was the mom of the 2005 false accuser, Gavin.
Yeah, but it just makes me remember some of my initial reactions of watching Leaving Neverland is when he talks about being sodomized, right? His body language was not really consistent with someone that had had a traumatic experience. And that's not to say that every person who experiences trauma is going to have a particular set of experiences and display that, but there are usually emotional responses that occur when people are talking about trauma. So we've got people who are in their 50s and their 60s and they're uber successful, right? They're CEO of companies, and they start talking about sexual trauma and their body can't. Their body is not usually going to be in a confident pose. Their body reflects, because the body can't lie. So the mind and mouth can say one thing, but the body is always going to give you cues to what actually.
Very astute observation.
Yeah, and so it made me also think that in this research, you talk about how the chief interviewer who was talking with Jordan initially said that he was very articulate and he was a manipulator because his body language was not consistent with the type of trauma that he was talking about. And I was like, I remember when I first said that, people were upset. They're like, oh, people have different experience. I'm like, no, the body holds memories. The body truly does, and we have to.
That's a great point.
I definitely believe we should create space for believing victims and creating the space to where they should be heard. But we also have to temper that with false allegations and not necessarily giving someone like a platform, right? Because you mean to tell me that a child gets sodomized, is able to talk about it in a national case, and has years later, no type of body reaction to that, when there are people who no one knew about their trauma and they can't even, there's just so much there that has more questions, not saying that anything is untrue or not true. I'm just saying that behavior is abnormal.
But you raise a very important point, and I can't not, in terms of false accusation. And doing due diligence to allow for and eliminate the possibility of false accusation. And Michael was a victim of horrible false allegations in the context of the Me Too movement. I have to say this. It started, I believe, very right. The irony, Harvey Weinstein, All of these people, the gay mafia is his people's. Right? Harvey Weinstein, I guess, is only heterosexual in Hollywood. Harvey Weinstein sexually abused all of these white women, and he's finally paying a piper for it unless his powerful friends are able to finagle him out. But his powerful friends, his best friends, are Edgar Brofman, David Geffen. So when a pillar like that falls, the initial assumption should be he fell out with the company. Hollywood is a company town, and you are protected in everything you do as long as you are good with the company. And when a company man falls, it's because he fell out with the company. So Harvey Weinstein's fall signals to me he fell out with the company. But I say that because the Me Too movement sprung up from Harvey Weinstein's predatory behavior, and it made known, and that was very legitimate, but it has morphed into a feminazi weapon. A feminazi weapon.
What do you mean by that?
So you see all of these men who said 30 years ago, "Ooh, you sexy in that dress." Now they booted off MSNBC, not because that woman in 1980 was offended because he said, "Oh, you sexy in that dress." She was flattered. But in 2020, these people, for whatever reason, are targeting this person, and the easiest and surest way to target a male is in a Me Too context. And because the charges will not be vetted, the damage will be done. You will be fired. You will be removed before any due diligence or vetting is done. So the Me Too movement is used to take down men who, some are predators, some transparently are not. And it's a political use of the Me Too movement. And I'm seeing more political use of the Me Too movement than genuine uprooting of the predators, because y'all should not just know Harvey Weinstein. The only reason you know Harvey Weinstein is because he fell out with the company, because all the Hollywood, and that's what we document. The predation of women. Please, sisters, don't take this wrong.
Oh, we about to say.
I'm gonna say it. Given what we know of the darkness that is Hollywood, the casting couch that women are subjected to and subject themselves to, that's the least of the evils of Hollywood. The casting couch is the least of the evils of Hollywood. In all of the smallest man on the Hollywood totem pole benefits from the casting couch. But underneath that is the organized pedophilia, child rape. But you don't, none of Harvey Weinstein's fellow sexual predators And all of his associates are straight and gay. His straight associates are predators of women. His gay associates are predators of children. All of Hollywood, and this is what we document, it's a very dark place. But all you know is Harvey Weinstein, which lets you know it's not a genuine Me Too moment. He was targeted. If it was a genuine Me Too moment, then you would know all of Hollywood sexual predators, but you don't. Kevin Spacey was Bryan Singer's. We talk about Bryan Singer. Brian, I love X-Men. Anybody love X-Men? I'm a big X-Men fan, except the director of X-Men is a notorious child molester of Hollywood, Bryan Singer. Notorious. Protected by David Geffen, but his sins against white children got so excessive that he put himself out of the protective shadow of even David Geffen. Harvey Weinstein put himself out of the protective shadow of David Geffen. The only ones you hear about from Me Too or whoever are those whose excesses are so great they cross somebody, so they are put on a chopping block. Bill Cosby wasn't no predator. He liked white women married to a black woman. He did some wrong stuff, but he didn't do what he's in jail for doing. No, Bill Cosby is not to be invoked in this discussion. Don't put Bill Cosby with Bryan Singer. You can't put Bill Cosby with Harvey Weinstein. Bill Cosby took advantage of the free sex and drugs of the 70s with white women, and so they quaaludes. That's what they did, and they had drugs and they had sex. He shouldn't have done that. But that ain't Harvey Weinstein, not just mandating the casting couch, but physically raping women. No, they aren't the same. That's not Bryan Singer,
Right.
who is notorious. When you, for those in the know, for us, we associate Bryan Singer with X-Men. For Hollywood, they associate Bryan Singer with twinks. You know what a twink is? From Twinkie. That's how they describe it's a term for a particular type of young, blonde-haired, hairless boy who's disposable, sexually attractive, but has no nutritional value like a Twinkie, and is easily disposable. Bryan Singer is famous for his twinks and his twink parties, the gay parties of Hollywood. No. The real freaks of the industry aren't Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, though they have committed crimes. But that's the point. We talk about Conrad Murray, who the black doctor who delivered propofol to Michael Jackson, but we don't talk about Arnold Klein,
Yeah, let's
the
get
gay
into him.
Jewish doctor who delivered the Demerol, that likely was the real culprit in the fatality of Michael Jackson, not propofol. Propofol was the fall guy, but Demerol had to disappear because Demerol connects the death to Arnold Klein, which directly connects it to David Geffen, because Arnold Klein was David Geffen's.
And the Jackson family publicly said that they actually don't think that Conrad he was a part of it, but necessarily that he actually was the fallout guy for it, taking the fall for everything, and that Dr. Arnold Klein had more to do with it. Now, Dr. Arnold Klein is really interesting because he's a dermatologist who was also responsible for Michael Jackson becoming white, yeah. Which is crazy because a lot of black people have said that, you know, you've seen those memes where they show him as a black man, and then they jokingly say now he's a white woman. And that was something that Dr. Arnold Klein said himself that he didn't have to do. It was actually reversible, that he could have stayed melanated. However, that he made the decision, not Michael Jackson, he made the decision to bleach his skin. The crazy part is that this is a dermatologist publicly saying this on different interviews, that he made a decision for his patient.
Yeah. So, again, we're vindicating Michael Jackson. And one of the false charges against Michael that we're vindicating him from. So false charge, he wanted to be white. Nothing could be further from the truth. And you're right. We black folks, especially we woke black folks, that's our signature. We really jump on that, which lets you know how woke we ain't. Because we always, Michael Jackson, no, white woman. And the woker we are, the more lethal our mockery of Michael Jackson and his alleged desire to be white. And nothing could be further from the truth. Michael Jackson did have vitiligo, but with vitiligo, you have two options. You can try to darken the light spots and preserve the dark complexion, or you can expand the light spots and go light complexion. Michael's choice was to preserve the dark complexion. Michael tried to stay black. Mike, they say, well, what about his nose? Let me clear that up, because when I posted this, once we demonstrate clearly that Michael never went white. The white face was imposed on him by his enemy, Arnold Klein, the same one that drugged him in 93 and drugged him in 2009, but he was a agent of David Geffen, not Michael Jackson. So this black god was made totally, Michael Jackson was made allergic to the sun, because Arnold Klein, this white Jew, himself made the decision to not only lighten Michael's skin, but use a very bad chemical to do so, Benoquin, that kills melanin producing cells, eliminates them permanently. So Michael always had the umbrella, not because he's wacko Jacko, that's what the British tabloids dubbed him, wacko Jacko. No, he had that umbrella all of the time because he was made literally allergic to the life-giving sun. What about his nose? Well, he did break his nose and he had rhinoplasty, but he did seize the opportunity then to alter his nose. Why? Because we black folks, not him, but the ones around him, it was those who, as a little boy, in their self-hatred, tormented that black child for his nose. See, this is a very bad analogy, but just go to say, y'all don't know my first name, because I don't use my first name.
It's not Dr. Wesley?
No.
Actually, I didn't know that.
And I don't use my first name because I was traumatized as a child by the children making fun of my first name, right? So,
oh,
and so
Now we all want to know.
Yeah,
We'll edit it out. We'll edit it
But
out.
look, that was I could switch from my first name to my middle name and just solve that problem. And no child ever laughed or made fun of my name again. Michael didn't have an alternative nose that he could switch to avoid the torment that those self-hating Negroes that were around him, family, I love them, but that's the fact. They mercilessly teased him about his nose. And so when he did break his nose and rhinoplasty was necessary, he did seize the opportunity to cosmetically change it. He confessed this. But you can't blame him for the psychological trauma. We can't make him the self-hater. It's the one that teased him for his African nose. Those are the self-haters. And he was victimized by self-hate. So, and Michael Jackson, regretted what was done to him, his appearance. He never wanted to be white. That's what, in terms of his regret, that's what we get from Teddy Riley, who was on the Dangerous tour with Michael. He was close to Michael and had conversations with Michael. And according to Teddy Riley, Michael was regretful of the choices that was made with his appearance.
Something that we have to talk about that is very significant is during the autopsy report, it's revealed that versed midazolam was found in his bloodstream. What's interesting about this particular drug is in 2001, after 9/11, this drug is also a part of the Office of Medical Services, spearheaded by the CIA, in which they're essentially torturing people, but giving them this drug and then making suggestions. So in one example, you talk about this man, he's taking that particular drug and the finger snapped and all of a sudden he waterboards himself, right? And it makes me also think about in research, when we learn about the human brain, is a lot of the times we think we're making choices when we're not making choices, and that people can implant choices in you. And
it's called mind control.
Right. And under mind control, though, as an individual, right, we will defend it. So I'll say, nope, I wore this dress because Janita wanted to wear this dress, when really it could have been something implanted in me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely want to wear this dress. But then I'm going to attach my action to that and say that I completely made this thought independently. And so when I read this part and I thought about that, about this particular drug, it's crazy because Project Medication went from 2001 to 2003, where they're mind controlling people. I mean, officially it says it was from 2001 to 2003. It could have been much longer
know what it was
than what we know, but we're talking about people playing with other people's lives. And so on the tour, it talks about the people around Michael Jackson were saying that at one point he was just saying yes to everything, right? But when you're under this drug, of course you're going to say yes to everything because you're not actually capable of making your own decisions at that particular time, even though independently he was able to articulate, yes, I will.
That's the darkest and most revealing drug that was coursing through Michael Jackson's veins. The propofol narrative, death by propofol, that was a later development. Propofol was a fall drug, like Fall Guy. Propofol was used to conceal other drugs. That if we knew of the presence of those two drugs, then we would know the murder of Michael Jackson was way bigger than Conrad Murray. Demerol would have forced us to connect his death with the gay mafia through Arnold Klein. And that's why all of the initial reports focus on Demerol, not propofol. The initial reports were Demerol. Then Demerol disappeared because the connection to the gay mafia had to disappear. What also disappeared was midazolam. Midazolam is a very dark drug that takes the murder higher even than the gay mafia. Let me. They just executed Nathaniel Woods in Alabama. Has a connection. They executed Nathaniel Woods by lethal injection. And Independent, the journal Independent, they discuss his lethal injection. And their title is Chemically Burned at the Stake. And they discuss lethal injection is done by a cocktail of 3 drugs. The first drug, midazolam, the exact drug that was part of the cocktail that killed Michael Jackson. He was given a lethal injection. But midazolam it has several qualities. Not only is it one of the 3 chemicals in the lethal injection regimen, but midazolam is also the original date rape drug because midazolam does 2 things. It makes you it puts you in conscious sedation. You're awake, but you're sedated, so you're compliant. And so it makes you compliant to whatever your controller at the moment desires.
Right.
And it gives amnesia. So you won't remember. You're compliant, you will do whatever your handler wants you to do, and then you won't remember it after. In hospitals, certain psychiatric hospitals, like midazolam, because it's a great patient control drug. It can control the patient with midazolam. So it's a date rape drug. Midazolam was part of the chemical cocktail delivered to Michael on the night he was murdered. But even darker than midazolam, because it's hard to get midazolam. In fact, the states that use lethal injection, they can't just purchase midazolam, the state government, because nobody wants to provide, none of the manufacturers wants to provide it, because death row inmates, some of them have opted for electric chair over lethal injection. So no pharmaceutical company is willing to supply midazolam to the states that use lethal injection. So the states have to backdoor and hook and crook. So how did Conrad Murray get midazolam?
Right.
There's a darker, to Sister Janita's point, there's a very darker context to midazolam. After 9/11, the CIA engaged in a a torture program on so-called terrorist detainees. Part of that torture program was Project Medication. Project Medication was the drug and mind control part of the post 9/11 torture program, but Project Medication had a very specific objective.
Mm-hmm.
The CIA had invested $80 million in studying what they called learned helplessness.
Mm.
Learned helplessness is when a human is put in such a depressive state as a result of continuous failing.
Mm-hmm.
Striving for something and continuously failing, and that continued failing puts the person in a state of apathy, a state of depression, which will lead to a state of total compliance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Resignation, and just compliance.
Are you familiar with the famous rat study where there was some cheese, and every time the rats would go get the cheese, they would be zapped?
Mm-hmm.
And so each time they'd go, they're zapped, they're zapped, they're zapped. And then
Yes.
eventually they take off the equipment that zaps the mice or the rats. And through learned helplessness, when there is nothing that would prevent them from getting the cheese, the rats would, or the mice would not move forward to get the cheese.
That's exactly what happened.
Mm.
Well, with Project Medication, the zap that was tested was the drug midazolam.
Mm-hmm.
So Project Medication was a CIA operation to induce in an individual population learned helplessness through the use of this drug midazolam. And Michael Jackson was put in a state of learned helplessness. And so all of those around him, they say he was drugged with these drugs, and he was in a state of chemical compliance. So everything Randy Phillips said, do this, he just said yes, including, this is how his enemies, John Bronca and Frank DeLeo and John McClane, became the executors of his estate. Michael hated John Bronca, the lawyer. He fired him twice. When John Bronca presented Katherine Jackson with a fake will, that wasn't signed by Michael Jackson, because it couldn't be signed by Michael Jackson, because at the time the will was executed in LA, Michael Jackson was demonstrably, we saw Michael Jackson, he was in New York protesting Sony. But when John Bronca presented that fake will to Katherine Jackson, his words to that grieving mother was, I am Michael Jackson now. How did he become Michael Jackson now? Because 3 days before the hit on June 25th, they had Michael effectively in the drug-induced state of learned helplessness and at the Staples Center, while Michael is drugged and just compliant, and he's saying yes to everything. John Bronca with Randy Phillips walks into his dressing room and shoves a letter of re-signing in his hand. And Michael, drugged and unable to resist, learned helplessness, he signs his enemy, his sworn enemy, over his estate. That's the CIA, the success of the CIA's learned helplessness operation, Project Medication. So we don't hear about Demerol because we will be forced to look at the gay mafia in the Michael. We don't hear about Medazzaland because we will be forced to look at the CIA in his hand in the death of Michael. How, Conrad Murray, did you get your hands on Medazzaland where state governments can't get their hands on Medazzaland except through backdoor means? What back doors did you have open to you, Conrad Murray? And I'm gonna end that on this. Chemically burned at the stake, our brother Nathaniel was chemically burned at the stake. They chemically burned and murdered Michael Jackson. The Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan described Michael Jackson as the archangel of sound, of song, and of dance. He also described Michael Jackson, his friend, as the herald of the Messiah. The way they successfully chemically assaulted, chemically burned at the stake, the herald of the Messiah. They attempted to chemically burn at the stake the Messiah. The Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, and you who were blessed enough to tune in or join us at Savior's Day Part 2 when the Honorable Brother Minister spoke to us from Mas Mariam. He mentioned his physical struggle, how his insides, his internal organs are all but incinerated because they tried to kill him with radiation seeds. They fed his body such high levels of radiation seeds, seeking to incinerate, seeking to chemically burn him at the stake. They weren't successful in chemically burning at the stake the Messiah. They were successful in chemically burning at the stake the herald of the Messiah, Michael Jackson. And they chemically burn us at the stake every day. 79th Street, Southside Chicago is littered with black guys that were burned, chemically burned at the stake. Juice WRLD was chemically burned at the stake because it's not just Medazzaland that is a chemical fire, but we are dying by polypharmacy. It ain't enough for us. We don't rap about, and see, that's the point. We don't, Future, young guy, don't matter who it is, nobody raps about one drug. They all one up each other by bragging about how many drugs, how many different drugs they can consume. My street cred is based on the spectrum of pills I can pop. Death by polypharmacy. And all of our hip hop deaths were by polypharmacy. The combination of drugs, the toxic reaction of a combination of drugs. Death by polypharmacy. But you know why I say it's murder, Juice WRLD, because the polypharmacy that's rapped about. My artists who don't engage in polypharmacy like that. But everybody is rapping about it because it's a script that was written and handed and mandated to our artists. So the artists don't engage, but our young listeners, like young Juice WRLD, does engage, and the whole point was to use hip hop to normalize in Black America the means of murder they used against Michael Jackson. That's the point.
Mm.
Michael's murder has been normalized in Black culture. It's celebrated. It's like Christians. I'm sorry. But it's like Christians with the crucifix, with your Lord hanging on it, hanging on your neck. The crucifix as the means of a horrendous murder of your Lord. Him on the cross with the nails in his hands and his feet, invoking all the pain that he would have suffered, but we wear that proudly. On the instrument of murder, the means, the horrific means of murdering our Lord, we celebrate. Wearing it around our neck. How foolish is that? But we do the same thing when we rap about polypharmacy. We are dying by polypharmacy. Michael was murdered through polypharmacy. And Black men and women are dying by polypharmacy, and we celebrate it. We are no better than the Christian with that crucifix and their murdered Lord around their neck.
Well, sometimes Crime TV has to do a part 2. So with that being said, we're going to close out and then open it up for the audience to ask questions, and then we'll definitely have to resume because, believe it or not, we're not even really...
Never scratched the surface.
No, we really haven't. We just laid out the foundation of who's connected, why these people are important, and then, I mean, there's just so much more, which means...
But access for the details.
Yeah.
You can access the full report. Of course, the report is the final chapter in our book, but you can access the report because I think this saga is that important. So on our webpage, drwesley.online, please subscribe to our webpage. And on that webpage, you can download the report for free. I'm going to keep it free, hoping, you will be inspired to get the full context.
Yeah.
This is a full context of what we read happened here. And what happened here is relevant to every Black man, woman, and child in America.
Well, powerful creators, you just tuned in to the season 4 premiere of Doing the Math with Dr. Wesley, where we just went over his latest report on how to kill a god, which is the vindication of the Michael Jackson murder. If you tuned in for the full episode of our season 4 premiere, then you're in for a special treat. Sister Nia Muhammad, owner of Neo Soul Nail Salon Lounge, did my nails. And that means she's going to offer you something really special. But you have to, 1, reach out to her, and 2, you have to say that you watched the full episode in order to get anything done. So thank you so much. Remember that if you want to watch more episodes of Doing the Math with Dr. Wesley, you can go to nfastudios.com and you can see all of our seasons from season 1, 2, 3, and our new season 4. And next week, we're going to go into further of part 2 of How to Kill a God. Thank you so much. Okay.
Peace and blessings. My name is Carmela Muhammad with the Foodie Spot, located at 7350 South Stony Island, Chicago. And we were blessed to be able to provide food for Doing the Math with Dr. Wesley.
Akira's is French.
Go ahead, Sister Janita. Unmute your microphone.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our season 4 premiere. We do have part 3 coming tomorrow, so we're going to go into a little Q&A. And also, if you're a Patreon and you're on and you would like to join this conversation live, we have emailed you a link in your Patreon inbox along with your regular emails. So check that, and then we will bring you on. So right now, we're going to go into some Q&A. We're going to bring back on Dr. Wesley so we can get that started. All right. That was a heavy show. Even our audience are like pretty heavy.
Yeah, me watching it was heavy. It was a heavy show. It's a heavy subject. It's a heavy matter. It's really, I will never the disgust, the hurt, the pain of what happened to our brother will never be muted with me. I don't think. So listening again, and we just touched on, this is a 100-page report that's very dense with detail. I don't think it can be said there's any filler material here. So we just scratched the surface, as you said, on the show so far. But even right under the surface is so dark and so unfortunate. Yeah. Long live the king.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable for me, even though like I've already participated in this discussion. I noticed there was parts of the show where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna walk away for a moment. I need a little bit of a break, because I mean, during the show it was just talking about pedophilia, murder, rape. Those are heavy conversations, and so it was definitely a lot just to even rewatch the conversation and to re-experience it. And I'm like, ooh. But we do have a lot of questions right now, so I'm going to start taking one. Daniel, Brother X, wants to know, is there a connection between David Geffen and those behind COVID-19? It's part 2. Are there characters that appear in both acts?
I have prepared a pretty extensive and detailed report on the origin of COVID-19 and how it became a Black epidemic. We've identified key actors in this act, as you describe it, dear brother. I found no warrant to connect David Geffen with this particular biocrime. So no, not at this point. My research doesn't make that connection. Though the individuals who we have identified as important persons of interest in this crime, COVID-19, this biocrime, we can examine their associations, and I'm sure we'll be surprised at who and what we find.
Right. So we'll pull up another question. Was his estate or will documented wait, hold on, sorry. Was his estate or will document forged? His family was alluding to that some years back ago. Any evidence of that thus far?
The will is definitely forged. The will that governs the estate right now was definitely a forged will. It did not have Michael Jackson's signature. John Branca presented it, and the date of the operative will, it's dated to a time when Michael Jackson demonstrably could not have been there. He was in New York. The family posted publicly that the will was forged, and John Branca presented a forged will to Mother Catherine Jackson. And at the time he presented the forged will, the fake will, it was at that time where he made the callous remark to Mother Catherine that I am Michael Jackson now. He became Michael Jackson with that forged will. That's how he got control of the estate of Michael Jackson. The enemy of Michael Jackson got control of his estate through a forged will. So yes, the will that currently presides, if you will, over the Michael Jackson estate is demonstrably fraudulent.
Well, how is he still able to maintain control of the estate with a known fraudulent document?
Because California, I said in there, Hollywood is a company town. And the one thing that came out of this investigation, and it's revealed with the Quaid's situation, and even Arnold Klein suffered it, the whistleblower. The courts of LA are part of the company. So the family took this obviously forged, fraudulent will to court. But the courts of LA are part of the company. And that's not just speculation in relation to the Michael Jackson case. You have so many, in so many cases, it's a clear fact that the courts are part of the LA courts are part of the company. So the family was never able to get justice in the courts with regard to this transparently fraudulent will.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on ahead to another question. Gabriel would like to know, Ann Nicole Smith and Britney Spears were highly drugged. Does Brother Doc know if the same drug used, as he explained, to control psychiatric patients or make them do what they wouldn't do if not drugged? The Jewish mafia certainly tries to make their target appear crazy before they are hit. They spared Britney Spears though.
I know nothing of Anna Nicole Smith's case or Britney Spears' case. I'm sorry. I've never had an interest in looking into them or at them, so I simply don't know. I don't know what drugs they were on. Your larger point, Brother Gabriel, of the Jewish mafia certainly tries to make their target appear crazy before the hit. That is standard operating procedure. Remember, before President Ronald Reagan bombed our brother Muammar Gaddafi in Libya with the most expensive at that time assassination attempt ever. Before they executed that hit, they made their propaganda apparatus, mainstream media, dubbed Gaddafi the mad dog of the Middle East, implying he's rabid, he's crazy. They had to make him crazy, had to make the target crazy, as you stated, to justify the hit. That's the standard operating procedure, not just of the Jewish mafia. It's the standard operating procedure of the U.S. government as well.
Yeah, it seems like that's like tactical strategy.
It is.
So we have another question, but why Michael Jackson? What's making him so powerful that his catalog alone, or this catalog alone, got to be bigger than that?
Michael Jackson was much bigger than his catalog. Michael Jackson was literally a god.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing, I imagine, to see if you are a white ruler, you're a white aristocrat, you are the white alpha male of society. It's one thing to see your daughter screaming uncontrollably at a concert for the Beatles. It's something very different to see your white daughter with the white daughters of all of your neighbors, your white neighbors, screaming uncontrollably for this black god. And Michael Jackson did it. Michael Jackson sucked up all of the air in the room like no one did. So I know, or I suspect, that really got to them. And another thing, I believe, because like you, Brother Michael, I do believe that the treatment of Michael Jackson in life and in death is bigger than his catalog, though they did covet his catalog. But when he was in London, I think he said something that really sealed the deal in the hearts of many of his enemies. When Michael Jackson said, you know, they think I'm just an entertainer or a dancer or a singer. Said, but I beat them with, he said, I outthought them. This black man, this powerful black man, and he's boasting about how he outthought these white people. And he did. And that too, the catalog issue, that goes even to the catalog issue, because yes, the catalog has so much financial value to it. And so they covered it for that. But also the catalog was an insult because Michael Jackson had financial advisors and they told him, don't make that purchase. David Geffen was his financial advisor at the time. And David Geffen told him not to make that. It would not be a good purchase. Michael Jackson used his own mind and instincts, made the purchase. That turned out to be the greatest business-minded purchase probably ever. And David Geffen, the financial advisor, had egg on his face. So Michael Jackson was bigger than his catalog. Michael Jackson was such a black god in this white world. And so I think that fueled his enemies. So yes, I do believe it was bigger than his catalog.
We have another question.
Godhood.
It was about his godhood. Yeah. I mean, not everyone has that level of magnetism to where you just walk into the room and everyone is in a daze and willing to, I mean, people are crying, you know. Like,
all over the planet. That's what he was a such a God, his magnetism transcended geography and it transcended generations. So every generation, the grown old people to modern day young people.
Yeah.
Loving Michael Jackson, he was so transcendent. Yeah, he was a genuine God.
I'm pretty sure and feel very confident that many people overseas actually probably learn how to speak English listening to Michael Jackson. And by that, that's just because a lot of people overseas, if they're not taking English classes, the ways in which they learn how to speak English is through our music, TV, as well as video games. So I'm pretty sure Michael Jackson taught people how to speak. Daryl Jackson wants to know, has the list of the 25 people who Michael Jackson named as his enemies been made available?
I know I have the first 5 or 6 documented in here. I have not come across the whole 25. I haven't come across that list, but the top 6 or 7 I know have been disclosed. And you would really be surprised. The rabbi, be surprised. Almost all of them are Jewish. So yeah, we documented the first 5, 6 on the list, but I have not seen the whole list of 25.
Since you documented this pretty well, for the average everyday person, what kind of tips can you give us that we can be aware of when we are actually encountering an enemy?
Well, that question would imply that I'm an expert on handling and detecting enemies.
I thought you would have some good insight, though, from all your research.
Okay, maybe Allah doesn't want me to say that. Okay. So, that's a pretty deep question. Hold on, wait a minute. I don't know why this is. This is going to. Yeah. I think it was T. Grizzly who said, Lord, I can handle my enemies. Just help me with my friends. And that's it. That was the problem that Michael Jackson ran into. It was his friends who did him in. His frenemies. Lord, I can handle my enemies. Just help me with my friends. So, I can't write a report on how to handle your enemies. I'm still learning.
Right.
How to judge character, how to discern a friend from an enemy from a frenemy. That's a skill, I suppose. That's a learning experience. I cannot answer that in a way that will suggest that I have reached the mountaintop on that yet. I'm still reading that book myself.
Well, we do appreciate the little nibbits you gave us about frenemies then. So we do have another question from Regina. Are the bands that you have been wearing for sale? If so, where can they be purchased?
The band is part of the Shirtless Black Guy Protocol 2020. It's part of the shirt. It's not a band. It's It's part of the apparel. And yes, the Black God Protocol 2020 will be made available now. You know, I gotta give so much credit to, you know, Michael Jackson was not just a god, but he was a G. Why'd I say that? Michael Jackson was surrounded by Jews because that's the industry. He was surrounded by Jews, and he declared famously, or really infamously, now my 3 best friends are Jews, and those 3 Jews that he named were his frenemies. But he was surrounded by Jews. He really had a kinship with them. They turned on him. And you notice, and I love Mike for this, he rocked that armband. Now, of course, the Nazis made the armband popular. They did not originate it. The Nazis made it popular. I don't know what Michael Jackson's thinking was when he adopted the armband. I adopted it. The significance of the armband for me, or for Black God Protocol, does transcend Michael Jackson, but it also salutes Michael Jackson, because Michael Jackson insisted, he did, with all of those Jews around him, he rocked the armband despite its obvious Nazi heritage, if you will. And he didn't care. He was G with it. Now, I don't know what conversations he had with those Jews around him when they were friends, or if the conversations changed when he fell out with them. He didn't care. He rocked it. And that's so G to me. And so I salute Mike. See, Mike had his ways, and folks won't automatically attribute G status to Michael Jackson, but in his own way, he was straight G.
Yeah.
So you know, we added, and this is the Black God Protocol logo. So the 2020 line of Black God Protocol has the armband, and its significance speaks to Mike on one level, but it also transcends Michael Jackson.
And people can get this at drwesley.online?
They will be able to, yes.
Nice. All right, so I know we have a couple more questions. Samuel wants to know, why isn't this used more often to control those among us? I'm not saying you are wrong, but one would make the case that you are making excuses for Michael Jackson singing over his rights by blaming C on a drug. How would you respond to that charge, my brother?
Let me understand it. One would make the case that you are making excuses for Michael Jackson by singing.
No, signing. I apologize. I read that wrong. Signing.
By blaming it on the drug. It's not making this an excuse. It's a natural fact. The day, the moment, the occasion, and the circumstances in which the signing over was done is documented.
Mm-hmm.
It was when the fateful night of, I believe it was June 19th, Michael Jackson was profoundly drugged and out of it. He was incapacitated. He was chemically incapacitated. He was in this dressing room and he was in an extreme state of incapacitation. And Randy Phillips marches John Branca in. Michael Jackson hadn't seen or talked to John Branca for several years before that. But in that moment, when Michael Jackson is in his dressing room, chemically incapacitated, he's out of it.
Mm-hmm.
John Branca walks in, hands a piece of paper over to Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson compliantly signs it. John Branca walks out and goes on vacation. He disappears. A couple days later, Michael Jackson is dead. John Branca comes back in and presents a false, fraudulent will. And on his authority is based on he was re-signed as Michael Jackson's attorney a few days before, but he was signed on that day when he was chemically incapacitated in his dressing room. So that's not making an excuse. That's just the fact. That's how it went down. And again, God is in the details. This isn't 100 pages of generalizing.
Right.
It's dense, not with filler material. It's dense with details. And the reason I keep invoking God is in the details because details establish the case. So, am I making excuses for him signing over his rights? Well, that general statement or question can be answered with the details of the circumstances of the signing over of his right. And those details strongly indicate ain't nobody making excuses. That's how that went down.
Well, and the second part to Samuel's the first part to Samuel's question also was, why isn't this used more often to control those among us?
It is. That's the whole point. That's why it's the murder of Michael Jackson and this message for hip hop and Black America. That's the whole point. Black America suffers. We live in a state of learned helplessness, the learned helplessness that was chemically imposed on Michael Jackson. Black America lives that learned helplessness. That's why we mentioned how hip hop has been used to normalize polypharmacy. And so our hip hop artists die two ways. Our hip hop artists don't die natural deaths. Our hip hop artists are murdered or death by polypharmacy.
Right.
And even those who don't die by polypharmacy, they promote polypharmacy in their lyrics. And so thousands of Black people are en route to death by polypharmacy, or we live in a state of chemical incapacitation. That's precisely how they control us. That's what we've documented. Excuse me.
Yeah, you've also documented this in the Black Man, Black Manhood, and Black Masculinity, along with the Pop Plot.
That's what we documented. That's what these
there you go.
Document is how this was done to control us. Why isn't it used more often to control those among us? It is the standard operating procedure on how to control Black America. That's why Black America settles on protesting the televised abuse of Black men, women, and children. We are in a state of learned helplessness, the most we will do is safely protest. We won't confront physically our enemies, our tormentors. No. We will just let off some steam at a protest and ask for small concessions.
Right.
Protesting for police reform. Protesting for Joe Biden with his racist ass.
I remember
for the right to vote with no shenanigans going on. Vote for Joe Biden. No, we are chemically, and that's why the pot plot. That's why I wrote 800 pages on the pot plot, because the most effective chemical controller of Black America right now is this weaponized weed. Get that? The most effective chemical controller, chemical incapacitator of Black America. It's this weaponized weed, and it is normalized throughout Black America.
I remember when I first read The Assault on the Black Man, Black Manhood, and Black Masculinity, and you documented the ways in which the U.S. government has authorized these chemical assaults on Black America, how disturbed I was. And I'll never forget, but you told me that the majority of Black people, we cannot fathom how wicked, you said Satan's mind actually is.
Muhammad said, we cannot fathom the depths of
the
Satan.
depths, yeah. Mm-hmm. Even though many of us are aware of what happened in Tulsa, and we could document certain things, it's always mind-blowing when you realize that these things are happening in 2020.
And it gets more wicked because it gets more scientific. And the title of our COVID-19 report is The Ultimate Biocrime. This particular, the COVID-19 pandemic, illustrates how advanced our enemies' scientific wickedness has come, and how scientifically diabolical our enemy is to us, Black people.
Yeah. Bridget Muhammad wants to know, rather than Googling for information, how do you do your research today? Thanks, peace, and love.
You see that behind me? This is how. With the documents, with hardcore physical documents, and I can take you around the war room, maybe some other time, but Google and the internet. Let me say this. Internet-based research will always pale in comparison to book-based research. It's not that the internet isn't useful. It's not that I don't use the internet. I didn't say internet-assisted research. The internet is a great tool to assist in research, and I absolutely avail myself to that tool. But internet-based research versus book-based research or document-based research. And what's the difference? The difference is in the details.
Right.
You're just going to get more details in the documents and the collection of documents, and God is in the details and truth is in the nuance. So you can start with an internet search if you choose. That's okay. But you have to quickly move from there if you want to do substantive research that allows you to see the nuances of truth and come to nuanced conclusions and present an appropriately nuanced narrative.
Right.
And so an example is the silliness of the early arguments during the early stages of this COVID-19 outbreak. The foolishness of the argument, 5G versus virus. And those who participated in that argument, no, it's 5G. No, it's a virus. It's clear that both sides of that argument are internet-based people, because the truth of the matter is the nuanced narrative demands a place of both.
Right.
But the internet does not make such nuance easy to come by. So, no, dear Sister Bridget, my research is document-based, internet-assisted, but document-based.
I think that's a great way to respond to that, because you could use those as a way to assist you, but you don't want to just stop and end right there. Google is the #1 search engine, followed by YouTube, which is the second #1 search engine. And what's interesting about those is anyone can make a Google page, anyone can make a YouTube page, and they don't have to have any type of level of credibility. So it becomes really troubling if all of your research is just simply on Google or YouTube. It's almost like Wikipedia. You know, if someone says they're citing Wikipedia, it's like anyone could go on Wikipedia and create some profile. I mean, they say they check it, and for the most part, a lot of them tend to be pretty accurate. But again, it's not.
I don't have a problem with one doing the search. Start there, but don't stop there.
Yeah, no,
and don't
no.
It. That a lot. If that leads you to down roads to research, fine.
And we talked about this yesterday too. Follow the paper trail. Go to the original source, because sometimes people paraphrase, and when they paraphrase, what they're paraphrasing completely misses what the original documentation was even trying to articulate. So, yeah. So Michael wants to know, why do you think, or why did the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say Allah permitted this to happen to our brother? Even after the minister said this, his lecture, the crucifixion of Michael Jackson, Allah took him because he fulfilled his purpose. There was nothing left for him to do.
That lecture, the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, the crucifixion of Michael Jackson. Everyone who loves our brother, Michael Jackson, should watch that lecture. It is on YouTube. You will get an understanding of our brother Michael bigger than you had before watching that lecture, because Michael Jackson was bigger than the king of pop, and the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan beautifully presents Michael Jackson in his proper context. Why did Allah permit this to happen to our brother? Well, it is Allah who had to permit it. We titled it How to Kill a God, but such a God on Michael's level, only God can give license to be killed, because God made Michael a God. So yes, he permitted Michael to suffer that at the hands of his enemies. And I said that there's lessons in the life and the death and the legacy of Michael Jackson for all of us. And so that's why the report is subtitled by design, How to Kill a God, the Murder of Michael Jackson. But I don't stop there. And its message for hip hop and Black America.
Mm-hmm.
I describe Michael Jackson in life and in death as synecdoche for all of Black America. Synecdoche is a literary term that means a part represents the whole. So Michael Jackson is an individual part of Black America, but in his life and in his murder, he represents Black America. And so learning what happened to Michael Jackson, how it happened to Michael Jackson, and that's why I keep making the point, Michael murdered by polypharmacy. Michael suffered death by polypharmacy, and Black men and women across this nation on a daily basis are suffering death by polypharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson's life and his death is a critically important, teachable moment for all of Black America.
Considering what has happened with the circumstances around Juice WRLD, would you say Black America is heeding the message and the lessons with Michael Jackson?
Absolutely not. Well, the lessons of Michael Jackson, to be fair, we have not had those lessons, to be in truth, before now. Black America, I've read, and I thank Allah, I've read the books, I've heard the theories regarding Michael Jackson. None of them put the pieces together.
Right.
We put the pieces together. I think Allah blessed us to put a coherent and responsible narrative together in terms of what happened to our brother. And now new lessons can be learned.
Mm-hmm.
The role of death by polypharmacy in this relation to the demise of Michael Jackson and its relationship to the condition of Black America. That point has not been made before now.
Right.
So that's not a lesson that we necessarily could have gotten before now, but now it's important to keep making that point so we get the lesson. But did we get the lesson from Juice WRLD? I do not believe we did. There's been death by polypharmacy in hip hop since Juice WRLD died.
Right.
I do not believe, and we will know we got that lesson when we stop hearing polypharmacy rapped about in our popular music.
I know these conversations have been enlightening for me because I think of when I first started. I never realized specifically with Future, right, that when I was listening to his music, I basically was listening to him talk about sweating out drugs until you pointed it out. And I was like, oh, wait. Yeah, you know, and then it was interesting to kind of go through that whole process with you about how mindless a lot of us are actually when we're consuming this music. We're repeating it. You know, I'm conscious of the words, or at least I think that I'm conscious of the words that I'm repeating. But really, the whole premise of the song is I'm about to get so high. And so since then, you know, I've noticed that I'm way more intentional about what type of music that I'm listening to, because I was like, oh, you know, I don't want to, you know, program myself to start going into a way that, or down a path that I might regret later on, and not even be aware that I'm programming myself to do that.
Right. We have to be intentional with the music we listen to. We have to be intentional with the food that we eat. We have to be intentional with which bottled water we drink. So the Quran says often, the holy book of the Muslims, it says often that this is a book for those who reflect. So we have to be reflective people. We can't just do stuff.
Right.
We got to be reflective. And that means you got to slow down. Y'all don't like how slow I am. I'm trying to get slower. More reflective today than I was before the apocalypse hit. So I want to be less vulnerable to slips of the tongue now than I was then. I want to be less vulnerable to mental slips now than I was then. I want to be less vulnerable to missteps now than I was then, because all of that takes on different consequences today. So we want to be reflective and in your great word, intentional in everything we do.
Yeah. So y'all, if you haven't already, you should go definitely check out some of our previous episodes, because Dr. Wesley has documented the ways in which sound waves and frequencies can make us vulnerable to behaving in ways that we consciously probably wouldn't act. And so if you haven't already, you can go to nfastudios.com and you could see some of our previous episodes. Or if you're a Patreon, you could also see some of our episodes. So you could go to Patreon/DoTheMathTV. I believe that is, if I'm, Patreon.com/DoTheMathTV, and then you can get those episodes. This is all documented, it's research, so you could definitely tease it out with us. All right, Gabriel Lopez, who's also one of our Patreons. Shout out to Gabriel. He wants to know, do MJ's children have anything left from the fortune of their father? I've noticed they are trying to make Paris Jackson look crazy, which is, I believe, one of the many steps before either get something out of the target or to kill it.
She came out on Rolling Stone and said she knows her father was murdered and she's going to seek justice for her father, and she knows who killed her, who murdered her father.
Yeah. Edward wants to know, I read that Prince. Oh, go ahead.
So the question was, I'm sorry, the question about his children was what?
Could we go back, please? Do the children have anything left from their fortune of their father?
See, I don't know. Emotion, I would hope so. I would think so. However, the estate has locked out Katherine Jackson. And so when you hear, for example, when the estate got like $700 million from Sony, it says the Michael Jackson estate got like $700 million from Sony. That was John Branca, Howard Weitzman, and John McClane, those who hijacked Michael's legacy, getting money from those who helped them hijack Michael's legacy. That's not Catherine and Joe Jackson. That's not Prince and Paris and Michael's children. Now, did they get some of that? I would hope so. But understand, when you hear the estate of Michael Jackson got this, or the estate of Michael Jackson did this, that's not the family.
Right.
That is the one who presented the mother with the fraudulent will and said, I am Michael Jackson now. That's who got that 700 million. So I don't know how much the children today benefit from the estate. I don't know that. But I know the primary beneficiaries of the estate are those who hijacked the estate from the family.
Edward wants to know, I read that Prince's medicine was swapped or spiked with fentanyl. Do you see anything fishy about his death from a cursory overview?
Absolutely. And I, as I made the point yesterday, AEG, that's Randy Phillips, CEO. These are the people who were responsible for Michael Jackson's demise. AEG was Prince's concert promoter at the time of his death. I absolutely, I said again, what this robust investigation signals to me, how in the manner in which Michael Jackson was murdered means every Hollywood death, especially Black Hollywood death, must be looked at again. And yes, I'm just on a cursory because I have not done the robust investigative work yet on Prince's death, but just cursory. There are connections between the infrastructure that murdered Michael. There's connections with those around Prince. There's connections with those around Whitney Houston when she died. So I do believe that a full investigation will, I believe this. I cannot say it for a fact because I have not done the research yet, but I can say based on what I see right now, I do believe that an actual investigation will turn up that Prince was murdered, that Whitney Houston was murdered, and that these are not isolated murders.
This makes me think, what would Black Hollywood look like, and how would it our Black celebrities' lives play out if we adopted separation, or at least Hollywood adopted separation? Just kind of makes me think, like, what would be different?
Separation is always, in every scenario, the solution. Separation, we cannot live agreeably with these people. I'm sorry. And Michael Jackson, and why he's so instructive. Michael Jackson was a god, but he was a god in their world. And as a god in their world, they were able to pull off the murder of this god. Michael Jackson had to go to his enemies, had to turn to his enemies and rely on his enemies because he was in their world. He was excelling and rising to the top in their world. And as long as we are in their world, we want to do so well in their world, and that's fine. But no level of doing well in their world protects us from them. That's what this proves.
Right. Not to go
high as Michael did, and Michael's highness in their world did not protect him from them.
Not to go too far off our original topic today, but I'm just curious, can Black people really live in a world in which we are agreeable with each other in separation when we don't even agree on what racism in America, let alone reparations or, you know, those different things?
Yeah. Well, two things. One, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and now the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan said, you know, Black people in America, they have the option. If you want to stay with your 400-year tormentor and enemy, fine. Stay. We're not going to kidnap you and make you come to the Black nation. Stay. Those who want to do something for themselves, those who want to build a new reality for themselves, then come. Now, those of us who opt to come and do something for ourselves, you are correct. In our current state, our current psychological state, meaning Black people,
right?
Our current psychological state, our current cultural state, our current spiritual state, we would just bring that the Negro and nigger-ish to the Black nation. So we have to transform en route to establishing a Black nation. That's why you got to understand the Nation of Islam. We have a different imperative. You activists, again, y'all want us out protesting in the streets, protesting for police reform. That's not our imperative.
Right.
Our imperative, first and foremost, y'all treat us as security goons. We can do that, but that's not the bread and butter of the Nation of Islam. That's not the point of the Nation of Islam. The point of the Nation of Islam is a transformation of Black life in preparation for peopling a Black nation with adequate Black people. That's our imperative. So if you don't see us marching at a protest, it's because we are doing our first order of business, shaping, reshaping, and transforming Black life.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll go ahead and take another question. Renetta, who usually comes when we actually are able to have physical conversations. She's one of our active live audience members. So hey, Renetta, hope all is well with you and your family.
Renetta.
She wants to know, do you think that if Michael Jackson would have stayed close to the FOI, he would have still been murdered? Do you think that others such as young Luther Vandross was murdered by these same people?
So in terms of Brother Luther Vandross, I don't know at all. I don't know anything about the circumstances of his death. I am a music fan of Luther, but I never did any looking, so I have nothing at all to offer regarding that part of your question, Sister Renetta. Do I think if Michael would have stayed close to the FOI, he would have still have been murdered? Yes, because Allah had clearly had signed off on it. Michael Jackson stayed close to the FOI, the paramount FOI, the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan. They remained close to his death, and right before his death, Michael called when AEG backdoored. Michael signed a contract for only 10 concerts. That's what he was sure he could physically handle. AEG backdoored another 40 concerts on him. Now, of course, as we said yesterday, AEG, it didn't matter to them 10 concerts, 50 concerts. They didn't intend to take Michael Jackson to London to do any concerts. So it didn't matter to them. When Michael found out that they backdoored 50 concerts on him, he called the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, and he said to the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan that they're trying to kill me. Michael Jackson and the Farrakhan family were very close to the day he died. So for some reason, this thought just keeps coming to my head. So I guess maybe Allah wants me to say it. You know, maybe. In terms of this question of why, you know, the U.S. government, this may seem totally left field, but for some reason it keeps nagging me, and so I'm just going to say it. Because I see the relevance in it. Allah, the U.S. government knows that the mothership is real. The mothership, of course, is the military aerial vehicle that was created to take this world out. The mothership, the wheel. Those so-called UFOs, they are baby planes from the mothership. Now, I bring that up only for this reason. The U.S. government knows firsthand the reality of the mothership. You know how they know? Because Allah allowed one of his ships with human pilots, divine pilots, the pilots that fly the baby planes, they are expert, they are divine pilots, they're human, but they fly a ship with a level of mathematics and technology that embarrasses this world. But Allah allowed one of them to crash in Roswell and kill the pilot. And the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan teaches us that was God giving the devil his calling card. He wants you to know, here, have one of my ships, have one of my pilots, study them both so you know how real this is. But that's how Allah delivered the knowledge to the enemy. He let one of the high tech, Michael was high tech, but Allah allowed that high tech vehicle to crash, and he allowed that superior human being to die in that crash just so the devil will have a calling card. So when I think about why did Allah allow Satan to kill Michael, why did Allah green light the murder of Michael? I can't say I know the answer to that question, but that fact keeps coming to my mind. And so I wanted to offer that.
Wow. Thomas Horn wants to know, according to your research, a great majority of the assault on the black man, black manhood, and black masculinity were conducted by Jewish scientists, just like the gay and Jewish mafia were the main culprits in the Michael Jackson's death. Is it mere coincidental that your research complements the secret relationship between blacks and Jews?
There's no coincidence at all. My research is just another chapter, if you will, to the broader body of research, the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. And it's all part of the mission of the Messiah, which is to expose Satan. See, me and the rest of the research team that produced the secret relationship between blacks and Jews, we serve the Messiah. And his task is exposing Satan. This is just a chapter in that book, the Exposing Satan book. So yes, or should I say no, there was no coincidence at all, dear Brother Thomas.
I think we'll have another question. Oh, yep. Christopher wants to know, Dr. Wesley, isn't this a case of a God murdering another God? Is this proof that we can never reach our potential being around white people?
If the other God of which you speak is the white man, or the Jew in particular, yes, the white man is the God of this world. And we are in his world. And Michael Jackson reached the heights in his world, and the devil or the God of this world murdered him. So yes, it is the case of one God murdering another God. And again, there's so many lessons in the life, death, and legacy of Brother Michael. And to your point, we are so fascinated by the white man's world. And we are so desirous of being successful, or rising high in the white man's world. And that's not wrong. We should want to be successful, but know that it is better that we separate, and separation is already in process. The Nation of Islam, the mind is the nucleus of the separate state. The nation is accused of being standoffish, of being isolationist. Yeah, man, we've been practicing social distancing from you people for 80 years now. Social distancing is our religious mandate. Because we have to be socially distant from this world and this culture. And if we want to excel in this world by adopting the ways and the culture and the principles of this world, then we will always be at the risk of the God of this world. We always risk neutralization. That's the word I was looking for. We always risk neutralization by the God of this world if, in order to achieve a measure of success in this world, we adopt the mind of this world. We adopt the ways of this world. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad promised his student, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, that he will reach the pinnacle of success in this world. In the white man's world, he will reach the pinnacle of success, but he won't do it by adopting the mind, the ways, and the culture of this world. So this world has no power over him. Farrakhan proves that we can achieve the pinnacle of success. We can achieve success in this world without being of this world.
Speaking on religious mandates, how do you make sense of right now there are a lot of white Christian churches, white Christian leaders who are actually actively speaking out of racism, specifically within the church?
And Look. I'm going to be record on repeat.
Right.
I don't care if it's a white celebrity. I don't care if it's a white athlete. I don't care if it's a white preacher. No white person speaking out on racism does anything for me. Damn, they speaking out. All of them are beneficiaries of American white supremacy. What would impress me is to see them use their wherewithal to chip away at the architecture of white supremacy. I don't want to hear, I'm not impressed by no preacher getting up in his pulpit, making a remark, or getting on CNN or CNBC and making some anti-racist remark. No. Use your resources to bring about the destruction of American white supremacy. And you can do that. That's not rhetoric.
Right.
They had the wherewithal to chip away at the architecture of American white supremacy. That will impress me.
Right.
But
well, thank you.
No white person gets pressed because they said something. I don't want to hear nothing about them.
Ahmad Parker wants to know, artist Cat Williams was deemed crazy when he spoke on the behind the scenes parties that go on in Hollywood blacks. In your booklet about MJ, you also spoke on some of these demonic parties. Do you think Hollywood blacks stay clear of Farrakhan because they are afraid of DG, Oprah, and others? Nope. I'm not sure who DG is. DG. You said no?
No question. I'm saying no question, meaning yes. Because Hollywood is so dark. Again, Black Hollywood is only a shadow of white Hollywood. R. Kelly is only a shadow of Bryan Singers and Whitesmiths.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a shadow does reflect the one that cast the shadow. So Black Hollywood. And if you, as I said yesterday, if you follow the Netflix series, Hollywood, and it depicts the dark, gay mafia in Hollywood. And of course, it has the Negro as lady of the race. He's in there too. And so, yes, Brother Ahmed, I do believe that I have Black Hollywood is a shadow of white Hollywood in its darkness. And so I could see that being a reason some in Black Hollywood would shun the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan.
We have another question. Is it true that Michael Jackson's father had Michael sterilized when he was a child?
Dr. Conrad Murray makes that claim. Dr. Conrad Murray claims that Joe Jackson gave the prepubescent Michael Jackson steroids, feminine steroids, so that he won't lose his voice. Voice won't roughen and mature, masculinize. I don't know that that is true or not. Dr. Conrad Murray he was one of the chemical hitmen.
Right.
On Michael. Did Conrad Murray say some things in his recounting his experience with Michael? Did he say some things that were probably true and helpful? Probably. Did Conrad Murray tell some lies? No question. So I don't know the truth of that. I know he makes that the claim that I shared, but I don't know the truth of that beyond what he claims.
Regina said, could you speak to us about how the public is maybe at times too critical of our entertainers out of ignorance, and that they may be risking their lives and their families' lives when taking a stand?
So yes, I do believe that is the case. We cannot, in terms of Black entertainers. See, when a Black entertainer takes a stand, you can tell me about them. Don't tell me about no white entertainer that takes a stand. There's a fundamental difference. I'm not just being a race guy. I'm not playing a race. There's a fundamental difference in those two. Because the Black entertainer don't benefit from white privilege. And so the Black entertainer, that's why, shout out to King James, meaning LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's so successful. Should we expect these entertainers to be Farrakhan in the NBA? No. That's not their mandate. But to be conscious in that world and to use your money to help Black people, Black young people, as LeBron James and others do. To use your platform to make a stand, that is commendable. I do commend Black celebrities who do it because they have way more to lose and they don't have white privilege they can fall back on to as a safety net.
Right.
So they can lose it all. So, our dear brother, Colin Kaepernick, he took a stand and he lost it all. Now, hopefully, he fought and got a settlement. Hopefully, it's a nice settlement. But he took a stand and he lost it all. That's what we experience when we take a stand. So I do salute those who take a stand. I would never expect any of them to go Farrakhan on them.
Mm-hmm.
No, Farrakhan is Farrakhan.
On the other side of that question, what about individuals who are also taking a stand, but maybe perhaps they're taking a stand more so in alignment with, Candace Owens, who testified at a congressional hearing that racism is not impacting Black Americans and things like that. What about could you speak to that as well?
Yeah, so crazy, confused, and complicit Negroes, they got the right to take their stand. Negroes got the freedom of speech. They got First Amendment rights too. Yeah. So yeah, but that's why. I keep politicians in their place. I keep entertainers in their place.
Mm-hmm.
I keep Black women married to white men in their place. Black men married to white women in their place. Does that mean that none of them can say or do any measure of good for the cause, it doesn't mean that.
Right.
So when they do some good, it's good to acknowledge the good that they do. Candace Owens said something right at one point, but most of what she say is foolishness. But consider the source. Everything about Candace Owens gives context to what falls out of that woman's mouth.
No, you're right about that. I think we may have another question. Oh, we do not. Well, no, let me see. Yeah. No, it doesn't look like we have another question right now. So, do you have any closing remarks for us then, Dr. Wesley?
No, I'll let you. I've said so much. I said so much, so we will let you have the last word. Close us out, and I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow.
Well, powerful creators, thank you all for tuning in to part 2 of our 3-part series on the Vindication of Michael Jackson, How to Kill a God. I know I said that backwards, but you were all with me on this. And so part 3 tomorrow is going to be a little bit different. We are going to go into a Q&A followed by another Q&A, but it's going to be really exciting because these are questions that some of you already have and haven't asked, and some of you have asked, and you're going to get to see Dr. Wesley go really deep into answering these questions. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our Do the Math YouTube page, as well as become a Patreon on our Patreon page at patreon.com/dothematthtv. And then you could always find new episodes as well as previous episodes on nfastudios.com. So I'm very grateful that you all have tuned in today, and I'm really excited for part 3 of our series. This is a very special series indeed.
People are asking for the book link. Please subscribe to my page, drwesley.online. You can download the report and other material, and you can purchase the book, Understanding the Assault on the Black Man, Black Manhood, and Black Masculinity, Volume 1 and Volume 2, The Pot Plot. You can avail yourselves to them at our webpage, drwesley.online.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I saw a couple comments with people saying that they've tried to download it and the site is not working. So do you have any update about that?
Download the report?
I wasn't sure if it was about either purchasing the book or downloading the report, but some people have said they've had some issues about that.
Okay. We'll
So how can they troubleshoot that if any issues occur so they can get these awesome resources?
Well, email. I will have my webmaster take a look at it, see what it is.
Okay.
So,
and you can also email too.
Try again, yeah. Email the site. Try again. I'll inquire with my webmaster. We'll get it fixed.
Thank you. All right, powerful creators. We will see you tomorrow at the same time for our part 3 episode. Thanks for tuning in.
America was not built on a firm foundation. The nation called America was doomed from its inception. How do you build a nation? Killing the native people. How do you build a nation? Bringing a whole people out of Africa to America to be made slaves. This is your foundation. The world is looking at a country going to hell. You are opting to be a part of that is unraveling right in front of your eyes. You see the country cascading downward. This is America. Why do you want to get into something that is coming to an end? So we are living in the time of the unraveling of this great nation.